Hey everyone. Before we dive into the story, I want to know where you're watching from right now. Are you at home? On your lunch break? Maybe commuting? Drop a comment and let me know what state or country you're in. I love seeing where this community reaches. And if you're new here, welcome. You're about to hear a story about the moment everything became crystal clear. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's talk about how sometimes it takes watching someone else's disaster to finally see your own. February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. While most people were posting photos of flowers and chocolate, my phone was blowing up with breaking news alerts. A luxury cruise ship, the Ocean Paradise, had suffered a catastrophic engine failure somewhere in the Caribbean. The ship was dead in the water, drifting with no power, no working systems, and over 3,000 passengers trapped on board. I'm Emma, by the way, Emma Martinez. I'm 41 years old, and at the time of this story, I'd been an ICU nurse for 12 years. I'd seen crisis situations up close, the kind where seconds matter, where families fall apart, where people show you exactly who they are under pressure. I thought I understood human behavior. I thought I'd seen it all. I had no idea I was about to see myself for the first time. That Valentine's Day evening, I was sitting in our living room in Columbus, Ohio. Our house was one of those cookie-cutter suburban builds from 2015. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, granite countertops, the whole American dream package. I'd just gotten home from a brutal 12-hour shift at the hospital. A 67-year-old man had coded 3 times on my watch. We'd brought him back each time, but I could still feel the compressions in my arms, the adrenaline crash making my hands shake slightly as I reached for the TV remote. I turned on the news, and there it was. Helicopter footage of the Ocean Paradise. The massive ship sat motionless in crystalline blue water that would have been beautiful under any other circumstances. But the images coming from on board were anything but beautiful. Passengers were waving makeshift flags from the deck, bed sheets, towels, anything they could find. The news crawl at the bottom of the screen told the story in fragments. No power for 48 hours, temperatures exceeding 100 degrees inside cabins, toilets overflowing, limited food and water, Coast Guard coordinating rescue. I couldn't look away. Something about those people waving for help, visible but unreachable, hit me in a place I didn't know was vulnerable. The correspondent on screen was interviewing a woman who'd managed to get a satellite call through to her daughter on shore. The daughter's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her cheeks as she described the last conversation with her mother. "She said they're sleeping on the deck now because it's too hot inside," the daughter said, her voice breaking. "My mom has diabetes. She's rationing her insulin because she doesn't know how much longer they'll be out there. She said people are getting sick from the food, from the water. She said her roommate, this elderly woman she just met, hasn't eaten in 2 days because she can't keep anything down. And Mom keeps asking me, when are they coming? When are they sending help? And I don't know what to tell her." I felt tears prick my own eyes. As a nurse, I understood exactly what that meant. Diabetes plus heat plus dehydration plus unreliable food was a potentially deadly combination. This wasn't just an inconvenience. People could actually die out there. That's when I heard the front door open. Derek, my husband of 11 years, though we'd been together for 15. I heard his briefcase hit the floor in the entryway with his characteristic thud, he never set it down gently, and then his footsteps approaching. "Hey," he called. "What's for dinner? I'm starving." Not, "Hi, how was your day?" Not, "Happy Valentine's Day." Just, "What's for dinner?" I was used to it. That was the thing. I was so used to it that I barely registered the casual dismissal anymore. It was just Derek being Derek. "I just got home," I said, not taking my eyes off the screen. "I haven't started anything yet. Give me a few minutes." He walked into the living room, loosening his tie. Derek was 45, tall, still had most of his dark hair, though it was graying at the temples in that way that made men look distinguished while women just look old. He wore expensive suits, sales executive at a medical supply company, good money, better commissions. He looked the part of success. "You're watching this cruise thing?" He reached for the remote. "Oh God, it's on every channel. They're really milking this for ratings." I pulled the remote away before he could change it. "These people have been stuck for 2 days. They're scared." He scoffed. Actually scoffed, and dropped on the couch next to me. Not close enough to touch, though. We hadn't sat close enough to touch in I couldn't remember how long. "Scared?" He shook his head. "Come on, Emma. They're being dramatic. It's not like the ship is actually sinking. They're just uncomfortable. The Coast Guard will get them eventually." Something twisted in my stomach, a feeling I couldn't quite name yet. "Did you hear what that woman just said? Her mother is diabetic and running out of insulin. People are getting sick. There are children on that ship." "Yeah, well, maybe their parents should have done more research before booking the cheapest cruise line they could find." He was scrolling through his phone now, barely paying attention. "You get what you pay for. This is what happens when people try to vacation on a budget." I stared at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. His jaw was set in that expression I knew so well, the one that said he'd already decided how he felt and nothing I said would change his mind, the one that made it clear he found the entire situation beneath his concern. "Derek, there are elderly people on that ship, sick people, kids. They're in a legitimate crisis." "It's not a crisis, it's an inconvenience." Finally, he looked up from his phone, irritation crossing his face. "Why are you getting so worked up about this? You don't even know these people." "Because I have empathy," I said. And even as the words left my mouth, I realized how sad it was that I had to explain that. "You mean you're being emotional about strangers on TV." He stood up, straightening his tie again. "This is exactly what the news wants, to get people like you all riled up over nothing. It's not that serious, Emma. They'll be fine. Now, seriously, what's for dinner? I've got a conference call at 8. He walked toward the kitchen, and I heard him opening the refrigerator, heard the criticism already forming. "We don't have anything. I thought you were going grocery shopping this weekend. Emma, come on. I can't eat cereal again." But I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring at the TV screen where they'd cut back to the stranded ship. A man was being interviewed via satellite phone now. You could hear the desperation in his voice, even through the crackling connection. "My mother is 78 years old," he was saying. "She has a heart condition. She needs her medication every day, and we're running out. I'm begging anyone who's listening. Please, my mother needs help. She can't wait much longer. Please." His voice cracked on that last "please," and something inside me cracked too. Because I'd heard that tone before, that desperation, that feeling of waving flags that nobody seemed to see, that sense of crying out for help while people on the shore told you it wasn't that bad. I'd heard it in my own voice for the past 15 years. And for the first time, really truly for the first time, I stopped and asked myself a question I should have asked years ago. When was the last time Derek actually saw me? Not Emma the wife who made dinner and did laundry and made sure his dry cleaning was picked up. Not Emma the convenient companion who could be brought to work functions when he needed a +1. Not even Emma the problem he occasionally had to deal with when I got emotional about things. When was the last time he'd seen me, Emma Martinez, nurse, daughter, sister, friend, human being with thoughts and feelings and fears and needs of my own? The answer settled in my chest like a stone. Never. He'd never seen me, not really. And the most terrifying part, I'd spent 15 years convincing myself that was normal. The cruise ship coverage played on in the background, but my mind had time-traveled backward. Funny how one moment of clarity can illuminate an entire history you'd kept in shadow. Our story started in June 2009. I was 26, working as a nursing assistant at Columbus General Hospital, picking up every extra shift I could get. I was drowning in student loan debt, almost $80,000 from my nursing degree, and living in a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet. But I was proud of myself. I'd done it. I was a nurse. I was helping people. Life had meaning, even if my bank account didn't. I met Derek at a hospital fundraiser gala. He was there as a guest of his company. They'd bought a table, and he was schmoozing potential clients. I was there because the hospital required a certain number of staff to attend these things, and I'd drawn the short straw. He found me at the bar, looking uncomfortable in a dress I'd borrowed from my roommate. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he'd said, smiling. He had this confident air about him, this easiness with the world that I'd never possessed. He wore his tuxedo like a second skin, while I kept tugging at my dress, worried the hem was too short. "That obvious?" I laughed, embarrassed. "Only because I feel the same way. These things are always the same: rubber chicken, boring speeches, people pretending they care about charity when they really just want to network." He'd leaned in closer. "Want to get out of here? There's a great pizza place around the corner." We left the gala and ended up talking until 2 a.m. over cheap pizza and cheaper beer. He told me about his job in medical sales, his ambitions to make director by 35, his dreams of the corner office and the six-figure bonuses. I told him about nursing school, about my patients, about how my dad had died of a heart attack when I was 19, and that's what made me want to become a nurse. "That's beautiful," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "You're going to change people's lives, Emma. That's real. That matters." I fell for him that night. Or maybe I fell for the way he made me feel, seen, special, like I was someone worth knowing. We were inseparable after that. He'd show up at the hospital after my shifts with coffee and food. He'd text me throughout the day, funny observations about his clients, sweet messages about how he was thinking of me. He made me feel like the center of his universe. The first crack appeared 3 months in. It was November 2009. I'd made plans weeks earlier to spend Thanksgiving with my family in Cincinnati, my mom, my younger sister Rachel, my grandparents. It was our first Thanksgiving without my dad, and my mom had asked specifically if I could come home. "She needs my girls here," she'd said on the phone, and I heard the grief underneath her cheerful tone. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Derek called me at work during my lunch break. "Hey babe, change of plans for Thursday," he said, his voice bright with excitement. "Marcus, that's my boss, is having people over for dinner. It's a huge opportunity. He only invites his top performers, and this is my chance to really get on his radar for that promotion." My stomach dropped. "Derek, I already told my mom we're coming. She's counting on us." "Right, yeah, but this is really important for my career. You understand, right? Marcus specifically asked if I was bringing you. He wants to meet the nurse girlfriend. This could be huge for us." "Huge for your career, you mean?" "Don't be like that, Em. A rising tide lifts all boats, Em. If I move up, we both benefit." I remember standing in the hospital break room, my lunch getting cold in front of me, trying to find the words to explain why this mattered so much. "My dad died last year. This is our first Thanksgiving without him. My mom needs me there." There was a pause on the line. Then, "It's just that we can't celebrate Thanksgiving 2 places at once, Em. Your dad isn't coming back because you show up to dinner. Your mom will understand. She's a reasonable person, right? Just explain that something came up for my work. Tell her we'll come for Christmas instead." Something came up. like my career was some unavoidable natural disaster rather than a choice he was making. "I don't want to disappoint her," I said quietly. "And I don't want to disappoint Marcus." His tone had shifted now from excitement to frustration. "Come on, Em, be a team player here. Relationships are about compromise, right? Sometimes you have to sacrifice what you want for the partnership." Partnership. That word hooked something in me. I'd grown up watching my parents' marriage, Dad coming home from his factory job exhausted, Mom teaching second grade and somehow managing to have dinner on the table. They were partners, real partners, the kind who showed up for each other. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe compromise meant sometimes putting his needs first. I called my mother that night from my apartment. The conversation still haunts me. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but something came up. Derek has this work thing and I need to support him and—" "It's okay, honey." Her voice was tight, controlled. "I understand. Work is important. We'll come for Christmas, I promise." "Of course, Christmas will be lovely." But I could hear it, the disappointment she was trying to hide, the loneliness she wouldn't admit to. She'd lost her husband of 30 years, and now she was losing Thanksgiving with her daughter, too. "Mom, if you really need me there—" No, Emma, you go support Derek. That's what you do when you love someone. You show up for their important moments." The irony of that statement wouldn't hit me until years later. We went to Marcus's Thanksgiving dinner. It was held in his massive house in Upper Arlington, one of those neighborhoods where every house costs more than most people make in a lifetime. Crystal chandeliers, catered food, people in clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. I smiled through the whole thing, made small talk with Marcus's wife about hospital work, laughed at appropriate moments, played the role of the supportive girlfriend so perfectly that Marcus pulled Derek aside before we left. "You've got a good one there," I heard him say. "Smart, pretty, and she knows when to let you shine. Keep her around." Derek had beamed. On the drive home, he was euphoric. "That went perfectly. Did you see how impressed Marcus was? This is exactly what I needed. You were amazing tonight, Em." I remember looking out the car window at the dark Ohio streets, wondering why I felt so hollow inside when everything had apparently gone so well. "I'm glad it worked out for you," I said. He didn't hear the sadness in my voice, or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. That night set a pattern I didn't recognize yet. Derek's needs came first. My feelings came second, if they came at all. And I learned to call it compromise instead of what it really was: erasure. I told myself it was one time, that I was being supportive, mature, understanding, that this was how adult relationships worked. I told myself anything except the truth, that I'd just learned I could set myself on fire to keep him warm, and he'd never even notice the smoke. We got married in May 2013. I was 30, he was 34. The wedding was beautiful, I'll give him that. Derek spared no expense. 400 guests at a country club in Dublin, Ohio. Open bar, live band, flowers that cost more than my first car. His sales career was taking off by then, and he wanted everyone to know it. What I remember most about our wedding day isn't the ceremony or the reception. It's the moment during our first dance when he whispered in my ear, "This is perfect. Everyone's going to remember this. This is how you show people you've made it." Not, "I'm so happy to marry you." Not, "I can't wait for our life together." "This is how you show people you've made it." I pushed the thought away, told myself I was being too sensitive. Of course he was happy to marry me. Why else would we be here? By 2015, I'd learned to read Derek like a weather forecast. I could predict his moods, his reactions, his needs before he even articulated them. It became a survival skill I didn't know I was developing. Good days were easy to spot. He'd come home energized, talking about his sales numbers, about the deal he'd just closed, about his commission check. On those days, I was amazing and the best wife and exactly what he needed. Bad days were a different animal entirely. A client would reject his pitch, or his numbers would come in below quota, or Marcus would make some comment about Derek needing to step up his game. On those days, I learned to make myself small. Nothing was right on bad days. Dinner was the wrong thing, or not ready on time, or too much, or not enough. The house was too messy, or I'd rearranged something and now he couldn't find anything. I'd spent too much money at the grocery store. I'd forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. I was on the phone with my mother too much. I wasn't listening. I didn't understand what kind of pressure he was under. I started keeping a mental catalog of triggers. Avoid asking about work until he brought it up first. Make sure dinner was ready by 6:30 but not dried out if he was late. Don't mention money unless he was in a good mood. Don't talk about my shifts at the hospital unless he specifically asked. He found my stories about patients depressing and said I brought too much work stress home. The ironic thing? I literally dealt with life and death situations every day. I held the hands of dying patients. I told families their loved ones weren't going to make it. I performed CPR on teenagers who'd overdosed and grandmothers having heart attacks. But my stress was depressing while his stress over quarterly sales figures was supposed to be the priority. I didn't see it then. I was too busy managing the weather patterns of our marriage. My sister Rachel visited in July 2014. She was 31, living in Portland, working as a photographer. She'd always been the creative one, the free spirit, while I was the responsible older sister who followed the rules and colored in the lines. We'd been close growing up, but after I married Derek, our conversations became more surface level. She'd call and I'd give her the highlights. Work was good, Derek was good, everything was fine. She stayed with us for 4 days, and by day 2, I could feel her watching me, really watching me, in that way siblings do when they know something's wrong but you haven't said it out loud yet. It was a Thursday evening. Derek had texted that he'd be home around 7. I started dinner at 6, timing everything perfectly. Rachel was sitting at the kitchen counter, drinking wine, telling me about a photo series she was working on. And then this incredible light came through the window, and I just knew. She stopped mid-sentence. "Emma, why do you keep checking the clock?"
"What? I'm not. You've looked at it 6 times in the last 10 minutes. I'm just keeping track of dinner timing." She was quiet for a moment. "When's Derek getting home?" 7. "So you have an hour. Why are you so tense?" I wasn't tense. Was I? I looked down at my hands and realized I was gripping the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. "I'm not tense. I just want everything to be ready when he gets here." Rachel set down her wine glass. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" "Nothing's going on. Everything's fine." "You've said fine like 30 times since I got here. You know what people say when things are actually fine? Nothing. They don't have to convince anyone." Before I could respond, I heard the garage door opening, 15 minutes early. My stomach dropped. Derek walked in and I could tell immediately it had been a bad day. His tie was loosened aggressively, his jaw set in that way that meant trouble. He barely acknowledged Rachel, just, "Hey, dinner ready?" "Almost," I said, moving quickly toward the stove. "Maybe 20 minutes?" "I'm starving, Emma. I texted you an hour ago that I was leaving early." I checked my phone. He had texted 40 minutes ago. I'd been talking to Rachel and hadn't seen it. "I'm sorry, I didn't see. I'll get it done as fast as I can." "Whatever." He headed upstairs without even greeting Rachel properly. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Rachel was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I said, too defensively. "You apologized." "Yeah, because I didn't start dinner early enough." "No, Em, you apologized for not seeing a text message 40 minutes ago. He's a grown adult who could have stopped and picked up food on the way home if he was that hungry, but instead you're scrambling like you did something wrong. I just don't want him to be upset. Why is that your job, managing his feelings?" I turned back to the stove, suddenly desperate to change the subject. "Can you set the table?" That night, after Derek had eaten in silence and retreated to his home office for a conference call, Rachel found me loading the dishwasher. "I need to say something, and you're probably going to be mad at me." "Rachel, just let me say it, okay?" She took a breath. "This isn't normal. The way you're walking on eggshells around him, the way you jumped when you heard the garage door, the way you apologized 3 times at dinner for absolutely nothing.
The food was perfect, by the way, but you apologized for it being a little dry when it wasn't, and for not having the right beer when he never told you what he wanted, and for some random thing about talking too much during dinner when you barely said 10 words. He's just stressed about work. That's not an excuse for making you feel like you have to be perfect all the time. Her eyes were fierce now, the same way Mom's used to get when she was fighting for one of us. You're my sister. I've known you your whole life, and I'm watching you disappear into whatever this is, and I can't just pretend I don't see it. Something cracked inside me. Just a hairline fracture, but it was there. What do you want me to say? I want you to admit that you're not happy. I am happy. We have a good life. He works hard, he makes good money, we have this house. Who cares about the house? She grabs my hands, stopping me from loading dishes. Em, do you hear yourself? You're listing things. You're not listing feelings. Because feelings aren't everything. Relationships take work. They're not always going to be butterflies in romance. Sometimes you have to weather the hard times. This isn't weather, Emma. This is climate. This is how things are, not a storm you're waiting to pass. I pulled my hands away. You don't understand. You're not married. You don't know what it's like to build a life with someone. The hurt that flashed across her face made me immediately regret the words. You're right, she said quietly. I don't. But I know what it's like to watch someone I love lose themselves, and that's what I'm watching happen to you. She left 2 days later, earlier than planned. We barely spoke for the next 6 months. When we did, our conversations were stilted, surface level. She didn't ask about Derek anymore, and I didn't offer information. I told myself she was being dramatic, that she didn't understand how relationships worked, that she was too independent, too used to doing things her own way to understand compromise. I told myself anything except the truth, that Rachel had seen what I was too scared to admit, that I'd been slowly erasing myself and I'd been calling it love. February 2019 was when I got the flu. And I mean the flu, not the sniffles that people call the flu. I mean influenza A, confirmed by rapid test, the kind that puts healthy people in the hospital and kills vulnerable ones. It started on a Tuesday. I woke up feeling off, but went to work anyway. We were short-staffed. Someone had called out, and I couldn't leave my team hanging. By hour 4 of my shift, I was running a fever. By hour 8, I was shaking so hard Patricia, my supervisor, sent me home without argument. You look gray, she said, feeling my forehead with the back of her hand. Go home, sleep. Don't come back until you're actually better, not just pushing through better. I drove home in a fog, every muscle in my body aching like I'd been beaten. I made it inside, collapsed on the couch, and texted Derek. Home sick, really sick. Could you pick up some medicine on your way home? He responded 3 hours later. Stuck in a meeting. There's probably something in the medicine cabinet. There wasn't. I'd been meaning to restock, but hadn't gotten to it. By the time Derek got home around 7 p.m., I was curled in a ball on the couch, shivering under every blanket I could find, my fever climbing toward 103. He walked in, took one look at me, and said, "Oh God, you look terrible. Is this contagious?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What can I do?" Just, "Is this contagious?" "It's the flu," I managed to say through chattering teeth. Could you go get me some Tylenol and maybe some soup?" He glanced at his watch. Now? I just got home. I haven't eaten yet either. I'm really sick, Derek. He sighed. Actually sighed, like I'd asked him to donate a kidney instead of pick up over-the-counter medicine. Fine. What do you need? I gave him a list, which he entered into his phone with the air of someone taking down criminal evidence. He left and came back 40 minutes later with half the things I'd asked for. They didn't have your brand of soup, he said, dropping the plastic bag on the coffee table. I got whatever, and I couldn't remember what strength Tylenol you wanted, so I guessed. He'd gotten children's Tylenol. The bottle literally had a cartoon character on it. This is for kids, I said weakly. It's the same thing, just take more of it. He was already walking toward the kitchen. I'm going to order something for dinner. You want anything? I can't eat. Right, well, I'm starving. He ordered Thai food and ate it in his office with the door closed. I lay on the couch, forcing down the children's Tylenol, trying not to think about how I'd sat with dying patients who had more people checking on them than I did right now. Over the next week, I got sicker before I got better. Fever fluctuating between 101 and 104, body aches so severe I couldn't lift my arms, cough so deep I thought I'd crack a rib. I called out of work for 5 days straight, the longest I'd ever been out sick. Derek's reaction evolved over those 5 days. Day 1 was mild annoyance. Day 2 was frustration. By day 3, he'd moved into full resentment. "Do you know what it's like trying to work from home with you coughing like that?" he said on day 3, standing in the bedroom doorway while I tried to sleep. "I'm on important calls, Emma. I can't have hacking in the background." "I'm sorry," I said, and even through my fever-addled brain, I recognized the insanity of apologizing for being sick. I can't really control it. "Maybe you should go to the doctor, get a prescription or something so you're not keeping me up all night." "I have been to the doctor. It's viral. Antibiotics won't help. I just need to rest." "Well, you've been resting for 3 days. How much longer is this going to last?" I stared at him, trying to find the man I'd married, the man who'd once told me I was going to change people's lives, the man who'd made me feel seen and special and cherished. I couldn't find him. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I'd built him out of wishful thinking and a desperate need to believe someone could love me that way. "I don't know," I said finally. "Hopefully not much longer." "Yeah, well, hopefully. I'm running out of clean clothes and we're out of basically everything food-wise. I've been living on takeout." The day I finally started feeling better, day 6, Derek came home from work with a laundry list of complaints. The house was a mess because I'd been too sick to clean. We were out of groceries because I'd been too sick to shop. He was behind on work because he'd had to deal with everything himself, by which he meant ordering his own takeout, and I'm honestly not sure what else. "I need you to understand," he said, standing in the kitchen while I tried to make myself tea with shaking hands, "how hard this week has been for me." I turned to look at him, steam from the kettle rising between us. "Hard for you?" "Yes, Emma, hard for me. I know you're sick, but life doesn't just stop. I still have a job, I still have responsibilities, and I've had to handle everything alone." "I brought you soup one time," I said quietly, "and it was the wrong kind." "Oh, here we go. I didn't do enough. I never do enough, do I?" "I had a 103-degree fever and you asked me to be quiet because you had a conference call. I had a job to do. We can't all just call out for a week whenever we don't feel good." That's when something inside me shifted, just slightly, just enough to let a tiny sliver of light into a dark room. I almost went to the hospital on day 4. I was so dehydrated I almost drove myself to the ER. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't, because I knew you'd be upset about the copay, and about having to pick me up, and about it being inconvenient." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I picked at my tea, my hands still shaking slightly. "Derek, when was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Actually asked, not just complained about how my being sick affected you. You're better now, right? So what does it matter?" What does it matter? I walked past him, went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed, my tea cooling in my hands, and let myself think something I'd been avoiding for years. If I'd actually had to go to the hospital, if I'd been seriously ill, life-threateningly ill, needed him desperately ill, he wouldn't have been there. Not really. Oh, he might have shown up physically. He might have sat in the waiting room checking his phone, calculating how this was impacting his work schedule. He might have visited my hospital room between meetings, stayed for the minimum acceptable time, and left as soon as he could. He wouldn't have been there in the way that mattered, in the way that said your life matters more than anything else, in the way that said I will move heaven and earth for you because you're my person. I was his wife, but I wasn't his person. The realization sat heavy in my chest, mixing with the lingering congestion from the flu. I finished my tea, lay down, and stared at the ceiling. I didn't know what to do with this information yet. I wasn't ready to acknowledge it fully, so I did what I'd been doing for years. I filed it away, told myself I was being too sensitive, that marriage was hard, that everyone felt lonely sometimes. I told myself anything except the truth, but the truth was starting to seep through the cracks. Back to February 2024, Valentine's Day. The ocean paradise, still stranded. Me on the couch, watching Derek walk into the kitchen complaining about dinner and feeling something crack wider inside me. I couldn't stop watching the coverage. Over the next 3 days, it dominated every news cycle. More details emerged, each one worse than the last. Passengers were sleeping on the deck because temperatures inside the cabins had reached 110 degrees. The sewage system had failed completely, toilets overflowing, waste backing up, the smell reportedly unbearable. People were getting sick from contaminated water, from food that had gone bad when the refrigeration failed. And through it all, the cruise line's response was slow, inadequate, defensive. Their CEO gave a press conference on day 3 that made everything worse. "We understand this is an inconvenient situation," he said, reading from prepared remarks. "But our guests are in no immediate danger. We're working with authorities to coordinate a rescue, but these things take time. We ask for patience and understanding." Inconvenient. He called it inconvenient? I was watching this press conference on my laptop in the living room. I'd started keeping the TV on the cruise coverage constantly, much to Derek's annoyance, when Derek came home early from work that Friday. "Still watching this?" he said, dropping his briefcase with that familiar thud. "It's been 3 days, Emma. Don't you think you're getting a little obsessed?" People are suffering. People are uncomfortable. There's a difference. He walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator. "We have any beer?" "I didn't get to the store. I had 3 12-hour shifts this week." So that's a no. He came back into the living room, holding a glass of water instead, his face set in that expression that meant I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. "You know what I think? I think all these people on that cruise are just looking for a payout. They'll sue the cruise line, claim trauma, get settlements. This is all performative." I paused the press conference, turned to look at him. Performative? Derek, there's a woman who had to throw away her insulin because it got too hot. There's a man whose elderly mother collapsed from dehydration. There are kids with heat rash covering their entire bodies. What part of that is performative? The part where they're all calling news stations instead of just dealing with it quietly. Everyone wants to be a victim these days. They're not claiming to be victims. They are victims of corporate negligence, of a mechanical failure, of a system that put profit over people's safety. "Oh, here we go. Now it's about corporate greed." He rolled his eyes. "Emma, these people bought tickets on a budget cruise line. They knew what they were getting. You want luxury accommodations and perfect safety? Pay for it. Don't book the cheapest option and then complain when things go wrong." Something hot and sharp rose in my throat. "So poor people don't deserve to be safe? Is that what you're saying?" "I'm saying people need to take responsibility for their choices. If you can't afford a good cruise, don't go on a cruise. Simple as that." There are families on that ship who saved for years for this vacation, working-class people who finally got to take their kids somewhere special, and now they're trapped in a nightmare, and your response is they should have known better? "Why are you getting so worked up about this?" His voice rose slightly, that edge of frustration creeping in that I knew too well. "These are strangers, Emma, strangers on TV. They don't know you. They don't care about you. Why do you care so much about them?" "Because I have empathy." The words came out louder than I intended. "Because when I see people suffering, I don't immediately look for ways to blame them or dismiss their pain. I actually feel something." "Oh, so now I don't have empathy? That's what you're saying?" "I'm saying that your first response to every person on that ship has been criticism. They're dramatic, they're exaggerating, they're looking for money, they should have known better. Have you once, even once, said, 'God, that must be terrifying,' or 'I hope they get help soon,' or literally anything that acknowledges their actual experience. Derek set his water down hard on the coffee table. You know what your problem is? You're too soft. You take everything personally. You see people on TV and you make it about you somehow. That's not empathy, Emma. That's just being emotional. And what's your excuse for not being emotional? I stood up, facing him. What's your excuse for watching people suffer and feeling nothing? I feel plenty. I just don't perform my feelings for everyone to see. You're right. You don't perform them. You don't show them at all. Not about strangers on a cruise ship. Not about your own wife. The words hung in the air between us. Derek's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I stopped, tried to gather my thoughts, tried to put into words something I'd been feeling for years, but never been able to articulate. It means that when I was sick last month with the flu, you never once asked how I was feeling. You only complained about how my being sick inconvenienced you. It means that when my dad died, you were annoyed that I couldn't get it together fast enough for your liking. It means that I've been waving flags for 15 years, Derek, and you've never once looked up from your phone long enough to see them. That's not fair. I've been there for you. Have you? Have you really? Or have you just been present, physically in the same space while being emotionally checked out of every moment that required you to actually see me? He shook his head, that familiar look of dismissal crossing his face. You're being dramatic. Just like the people on that cruise, everything's a crisis with you. Name one thing I told you was a crisis. What? One thing. In 15 years, name one thing I've come to you and said, this is a crisis about. He was quiet, arms crossed, jaw tight. You can't, I said softly, because I've never let myself have a crisis around you. I've learned over 15 years that my problems, my feelings, my needs, they're all just inconveniences to you, so I stopped having them, at least out loud. This is insane. You're taking some random cruise disaster and making it about our marriage for no reason. It's not about the cruise, Derek. The cruise just made me finally see what's been true all along. Those people on that ship are waving for help, and the cruise line keep telling them they're fine, that they're exaggerating, that they need to be patient and calm down. They're looking at people in genuine distress and saying, it's not that bad. Does that sound familiar? His face flushed red. That's completely different. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, I've been stranded in this marriage for years. And every time I've tried to signal that something's wrong, you've told me the same thing. I'm being too sensitive. I'm being dramatic. I'm being emotional. It's not that bad. I'm fine. You are fine. Look at your life, Emma. Look at this house. Look at everything I've provided. You've provided a house. You haven't provided a home. There's a difference. This is ridiculous. He grabbed his phone from the coffee table. I'm not doing this right now. I have work to do. Of course you do. He stopped at the doorway to his office, turned back. You know what? Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist, because this thing you're doing where you're watching the news and having some kind of breakdown over people you don't even know, that's not normal, Emma. He closed the door before I could respond. I stood there in the living room, the cruise coverage still paused on my laptop screen, and something crystallized in my mind with absolute clarity. Derek was right. I should talk to someone. But not because I was having a breakdown, because I was finally having a breakthrough. I called Dr. Sarah Kim's office on Monday morning during my lunch break at the hospital. I'd heard about her from Jessica, my friend from nursing school, who'd gone through her own divorce 2 years earlier. She's amazing, Jessica had told me over coffee 6 months ago. She specializes in trauma and relationship dynamics. She was the one who helped me see that what I thought was normal wasn't normal at all. At the time, I'd nodded and filed the information away, not quite ready to admit I might need it. But now, standing in the break room with my phone pressed to my ear, waiting for someone to pick up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Ready. Dr. Kim had an opening that Wednesday evening. I told Derek I was picking up an extra shift. He barely looked up from his laptop. Fine, I'll grab dinner out. Of course he would. Dr. Kim's office was in a renovated house in Victorian Village, all exposed brick and comfortable furniture that was clearly chosen to put people at ease. She was in her mid-50s, I guessed, with kind eyes and an air of someone who'd heard everything and wouldn't judge any of it. "So, Emma," she said, after I'd settled into an armchair with a cup of tea I didn't really want, "tell me what brought you here." I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. I was going to be calm, clinical, brief. I was going to present the facts clearly and objectively. Instead, I burst into tears. I've been watching this cruise ship disaster on the news, and my husband keeps saying the people are being dramatic, and I realized I'm those people. I've been stranded for 15 years and waving flags, and nobody's coming. Dr. Kim handed me a tissue box and waited. Didn't rush me, didn't tell me to calm down, just waited. When I finally composed myself enough to speak, I told her everything. The Thanksgiving incident in 2009, my sister's visit in 2014, the flu in 2019, Derek's response to the cruise coverage. 15 years compressed into 50 minutes of therapy speak, trying to explain how I'd gotten here. "Can I ask you something?" Dr. Kim said when I'd finished. "When you talk about Derek's reactions, you use a lot of qualifying language. He didn't mean it that way. He was just stressed. He was joking. It's not that bad. I'm fine." "You are fine," Dr. Kim said. "Or are you?" "What I want you to do," Dr. Kim said during week 4, "is I want you to keep a log. Every time Derek says or does something that makes you feel small, dismissed, or unseen, write it down. Don't explain it. Don't qualify it. Just document what happened and how you felt." I started the log that night. By the end of week 1, I had 17 entries. By the end of week 2, I had 34. Some were big. Told him about a patient who died during my shift. I was crying. He said, "That's the job you signed up for," and changed the subject to his golf game. Some were small. Asked if he wanted to watch a movie together. He said, "Sure, you pick." I picked a movie. He spent the whole time on his phone, then said, "That was boring," at the end. All of them followed the same pattern. My feelings, my needs, my very existence seemed to be an inconvenience he tolerated rather than a reality he engaged with. Week 5, I showed Dr. Kim the log. She read through it silently, her expression carefully neutral in that therapist way. "Emma, what do you notice when you read these entries?" "I'm not imagining things." "No, you're not. But there's something else. Look at how many times you wrote I felt versus he made me feel. What does that tell you?" I looked at the pages, saw the pattern she was pointing to. That I've taken responsibility for his behavior, that I've made his dismissal of me somehow about my feelings rather than his actions. Exactly. You've been taught to center his comfort over your reality. And that, Emma, is not a partnership. That's not love. That's you disappearing piece by piece to make room for someone who won't even notice you're gone. The words hit like a physical blow, not because they were mean, but because they were true. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice small. "What do you want to do?" I thought about the cruise ship, about those passengers finally being rescued after 5 days at sea, about them setting foot on solid ground again and realizing just how adrift they'd been. "I want to stop drowning," I said. "Then it's time to save yourself." I decided to talk to Derek on a Saturday morning in late March. Not a special day, not after a fight, just a regular Saturday when we were both home, both awake, both physically in the same space, even if we'd been emotionally absent from each other for years. I'd prepared. Dr. Kim had helped me practice what to say, how to stay grounded, how to not let him redirect or gaslight or make it about my oversensitivity. I had my therapy log printed out, 8 weeks of documentation that this wasn't in my head. Derek was in the living room, watching college basketball on TV. I walked in, sat down on the chair across from him, waited. He didn't look up. "Derek, I need to talk to you." "Can it wait? Game's close." "No, it can't wait anymore." Something in my tone made him finally look at me. The remote stayed in his hand, thumb hovering over the volume button like he might turn it up and drown me out. "What's up?" "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a very long time, and I think you know that." He muted the TV but didn't turn it off. The game played silently behind my words. "Where is this coming from? Did your sister say something? She's always trying to start drama." "This has nothing to do with Rachel. This is about you and me and the fact that we don't have a marriage. We have an arrangement where you make my life comfortable and you tolerate my existence." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my day, my actual day, not just whether dinner was ready?" "I ask about your day." "No, you don't. You ask, 'How was work?' while scrolling through your phone, and you don't listen to my answer. I could tell you I performed CPR on a teenager today, and you'd say, 'That's nice. Is there any beer in the fridge?' Now you're being dramatic. Stop." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Stop calling me dramatic. Stop dismissing my feelings. Stop making everything I say into evidence that I'm too emotional or too sensitive or too much." He set down the remote, leaned forward. "Okay, fine, I'm listening. What exactly is the problem?" "The problem is that I've spent 15 years trying to be the wife you wanted, and I've lost myself completely in the process. The problem is that you see me as a supporting character in your life instead of a full person with needs and feelings and worth. When I'm hurting, you tell me to get over it. When I'm scared, you tell me I'm overreacting. When I need you, you're not there." "I've been there for every important thing." "No, you haven't. You were at our wedding, sure. You were there physically, but emotionally? Derek, I don't think you've been emotionally present for me a single day of this marriage." "This is about the cruise thing, isn't it? Because I didn't have the same reaction you did on some random news story." "It's not about the cruise." I was standing now, didn't remember getting up. "It's not about the cruise. The cruise just made me see clearly for the first time. Those people were waving flags, and everyone around them kept saying they were fine. They were drowning, and people called them dramatic. That's been me for 15 years, drowning while you stood on the shore telling me I was fine." "That's not—" He stopped, ran his hand through his hair. "Emma, you're upset. Let's talk about this when you've calmed down." "I am calm. This is the calmest I've been in years because I finally see everything clearly. I see that you don't actually love me. You love the idea of having a wife, someone to manage your home and make you look good at company events and not ask too much of you emotionally. But me, the actual person I am, you don't know her. You've never wanted to." His face flushed. "You think I don't love you after everything I've provided? This house, this lifestyle? You've provided things, Derek. Not love, not support, not partnership, just things. And I'm supposed to be grateful enough for the things that I don't notice you've never actually seen me." "This is insane. You're acting insane." "No, I'm acting like someone who's finally woken up, and I don't like what I see." "What does that mean?" I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment Dr. Kim and I had prepared for, the moment I took back my life. "It means I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like smoke. Derek stared at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, anger, confusion. "You're not serious." "I am. I'm very serious. I've already spoken to an attorney. I'm filing next week." "Over what? Over some emotional crisis you're having about a fucking cruise ship?" "No. Over 15 years of being invisible in my own marriage, over being told I'm too much or not enough, depending on what's convenient for you. Over realizing that if I got sick again, really sick, life-threatening sick, you wouldn't be there, and I deserve better than that. I would be there. Would you? Because when I had the flu and could barely stand, you complained about my coughing interrupting your conference calls. When my father died, you were annoyed I wasn't over it fast enough. When I try to tell you about my day, you don't listen. When I'm hurting, you tell me to toughen up. So no, Derek, you wouldn't be there. Not in any way that matters. He was quiet for a long moment, then, so that's it? 15 years and you're just throwing it away? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm saving myself. There's a difference. You'll regret this. You'll realize you made a huge mistake and you'll come crawling back and I won't be there. Good, I said quietly. I hope you're not there, because I'm done crawling anywhere for anyone. I'm done making myself small. I'm done pretending I don't see what I see and feel what I feel. I'm done with all of it. You're making a huge mistake. The mistake was staying as long as I did. I walked out of the room, went upstairs, and closed the bedroom door. Through it, I could hear Derek turn the volume back up on the basketball game. Of course he did. What else would he do? Actually engage with what I just said? Actually feel something? Actually fight for our marriage? No, that would require seeing me as someone worth fighting for. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, and waited to feel regret or doubt or fear. Instead, I felt light, like I'd been holding my breath underwater for 15 years, and finally, I'd broken the surface. The next 3 months were a blur of paperwork and difficult conversations and packing up pieces of a life I thought was permanent but turned out to be temporary. I filed for divorce on April 1st. Derek didn't see the irony in the date, but I did. April Fool's Day. The perfect day to stop being a fool. He fought me on everything. The house. He wanted me to buy him out at an amount I couldn't possibly afford on a nurse's salary, even though I'd contributed just as much to the down payment and mortgage. The savings accounts, he claimed I was entitled to less because he'd made more money, conveniently ignoring that I'd worked just as hard, just in a different way. Even the furniture, he wanted to split everything 50-50, which meant I'd have to buy him out on items I'd picked out, paid for, and cared for while he never noticed they existed. My attorney, Amy Chen, was a fierce woman in her 60s who'd been through her own divorce 20 years earlier. She understood exactly what I was dealing with. Men like your husband, she said, during one of our meetings, they see marriage as a business arrangement where you're the CEO and you're supposed to be grateful for employment. When you quit, they treat it like a betrayal rather than what it is, you leaving a job that was destroying you. Derek's lawyer sent threatening letters about how uncooperative I was being. I was uncooperative because I refused to sign documents that gave him 70% of our assets while taking on none of the debt. I was uncooperative because I wouldn't agree to keep paying the mortgage on a house I'd be moving out of. I was uncooperative because I insisted on being treated fairly instead of being grateful for whatever crumbs he'd throw me. The thing about leaving a marriage like ours is that you don't just leave a person, you leave an entire ecosystem that's been built around keeping you small. Derek's family immediately sided with him. Of course they did. I was the one leaving. I was the one breaking up the family. His mother called me selfish. His sister called me ungrateful. His father didn't call at all. My own mother, to her credit, was supportive once she understood what had really been happening. I'd kept so much from her over the years, not wanting to worry her, not wanting to admit I'd made a mistake. But when I finally told her everything, the Thanksgiving incident from 2009, the sister visit from 2014, the flu, the cruise ship moment, she cried. I knew something was wrong, she said over the phone, her voice thick with tears and guilt. I could feel it every time we talked, but you kept saying you were fine, and I wanted to believe you. I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have pushed harder. It's not your fault, Mom. I was good at hiding it. I'd been hiding it from myself. Rachel flew out from Portland the day I signed the separation agreement. She helped me pack, her presence steady and calm and exactly what I needed. I'm proud of you, she said, wrapping one of my coffee mugs. I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. How do you know? How do you know I'm making a huge mistake? She set down the mug, came over to me where I was sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes. Em, do you remember that visit I made in 2014 when I told you I was worried about you? Yeah, we didn't talk for months after that. I know, and I regret that. Not what I said, but that I let our relationship suffer instead of keeping the door open. But you know what I don't regret? Speaking up. Because even though you weren't ready to hear it then, I planted a seed. And maybe that seed took 10 years to grow, but it grew. You're here now. You're leaving. You're saving yourself. It took a random cruise ship disaster for me to finally see it. Sometimes that's how it works. Sometimes you need something completely outside yourself to show you what's been true all along. There's no shame in that. There's only courage in finally acting on it.
I moved out on June 15th, 2024. Rachel had flown back out to help, and Jessica came too, and even Patricia from work showed up with her truck. We packed everything I was taking, which wasn't much, honestly. I didn't want most of the furniture, didn't want the dishes we'd gotten as wedding gifts, didn't want the decorations I'd carefully chosen for a home that had never felt like mine. I took my clothes, my books, the nursing school graduation photo of me and Jessica, the quilt my grandmother had made me before she died. I took things that were mine before Derek and would be mine after Derek. Derek wasn't there during the move. He'd arranged to be out of town on business that weekend, probably couldn't face watching me leave, or maybe he just genuinely didn't care enough to be there for this final moment. Either way, his absence was perfect. It was exactly who he'd been the entire marriage, not there when it mattered. I'd found a one-bedroom apartment in Victorian Village, not far from Dr. Kim's office, in a renovated building with exposed brick and big windows that let in actual light. It was half the size of the house, and rent was more than half the mortgage had been, but it was mine, all mine. Every piece of furniture I chose, every pink color I picked, every decision I made without having to check with someone else first. That first night in the new apartment, I sat on my secondhand couch, bought from Facebook Marketplace, delivered by two guys named Jose and Mike, who'd helped me carry it up 3 flights of stairs. And I cried. Not sad tears, not exactly happy tears either, just release, relief. The kind of crying you do when you've been holding something heavy for so long that setting it down feels like its own kind of pain. Rachel was staying with me for the week, sleeping on an air mattress in the corner. She came over, sat next to me, didn't say anything, just sat there while I cried, her hand on my shoulder, her presence saying everything that needed to be said. You're safe now. You're free now. You did it. The divorce was finalized on October 22nd, 2024, 6 months after I'd filed. 6 months of arguing over money and assets and who got what percentage of everything we'd built together. In the end, I got less than I deserved, but more than I'd feared. I got the savings account we designated for my expenses. Turned out Derek had been funneling money from our joint account into his own personal account for years, but Amy managed to claw back some of it. I got half the value of the house after we sold it. Derek had wanted to keep it, but he couldn't afford the mortgage on his own, another thing he blamed me for. I got my freedom, and that, it turned out, was priceless. It's December now. I'm 41 years old. I've been divorced for 2 months. I'm sitting in my apartment, mine alone, drinking coffee I made in my coffee maker at the exact time I wanted to make it, no one complaining that I woke them up or did it wrong.
The apartment is small, but it's perfect. Living room, tiny kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. I painted the bedroom walls a deep teal that Derek would have hated. Too dark makes the room look smaller. Why can't you just do white like normal people? I hung art I actually like, instead of the investment pieces Derek had insisted on. I have plants everywhere, 6 so far, all still alive, which feels like a personal victory. I water them when I want to. Nobody tells me the place looks like a greenhouse. I'm still working at the hospital, still doing those 12-hour ICU shifts where I hold hands and bear witness and sometimes watch people slip away despite everything we do. But now, when I come home to peace, to silence that feels like relief instead of tension, to a space where I can set down my work stress without immediately having to pick up someone else's. Last week, I had a patient who reminded me why I kept watching that cruise ship coverage so obsessively. Mr. Henderson, 72, admitted with sepsis. He was scared, disoriented, kept asking for his wife. She died 3 years earlier, but he kept forgetting, kept asking when she was coming to visit. She's coming soon, I'd tell him, holding his hand during the worst of it. She's on her way. It was a lie, but it was a kind lie, the kind that helps someone feel less alone in their darkest moment. That's when it hit me, what I've been trying to figure out about the cruise ship, about Derek, about everything. I'd spent 15 years with someone who couldn't offer me even that simple kindness, who couldn't hold my hand during the worst of it, who couldn't tell me comforting lies when the truth was too hard, who couldn't just be there, present and caring when I needed him. I gave him the simplest possible job. Just see me, just acknowledge my reality, just be kind. And he failed at it every single time. My sister and I have coffee every Sunday now. We video chat since she's still in Portland, but it's our standing date. We talk about everything. The years we lost when I was too deep in the marriage to maintain our relationship, the things she saw that I couldn't see yet, how she's proud of me for finally getting out. "Do you have regrets?" she asked me last Sunday, her face pixelated slightly on my laptop screen. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I regret the time," I said finally. 15 years is a long time to spend with someone who didn't actually want to know you. But I don't regret leaving, and I don't even regret staying as long as I did, because I don't think I could have left before I was ready. I had to see it clearly. The cruise ship helped me see it clearly. Do you still think about it, the cruise ship? Sometimes. They're suing the cruise line now, class action lawsuit. And the comments sections are full of people saying exactly what Derek said, that they're being dramatic, that they're just looking for money, that it wasn't that bad. But it was that bad. Yeah, I do. Because I know what it's like to be trapped in a situation with no power while people tell you you're fine. I know what it's like to wave flags that nobody sees. I know what it's like to finally get rescued and have people say you could have just swum to shore yourself. Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you'll date again?" "Maybe someday, not now. Right now, I'm learning who I am without someone else defining me. I'm learning what I like, what I want, what I won't tolerate. I'm learning that being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship." That's very mature of you. "Therapy is expensive but effective," I smiled. "Dr. Kim says I need to practice sitting with my own company before I invite anyone else in. Learn to like my own presence before I share it." Smart woman. The smartest. She's helping me understand something I never got before, that I wasn't actually in love with Derek. I was in love with the potential of Derek, with who I thought he could be if he just tried. But potential isn't real. It's a fantasy. And I wasted 15 years of my life on a fantasy. Jessica and I have lunch every couple of weeks. She understands in a way that some of my other friends don't. She went through her own divorce, her own awakening, her own realization that the man she'd married wasn't who she thought he was. The cruise ship thing is genius, she said last week over sandwiches. Like, you literally watched your marriage play out on TV and finally saw it for what it was. I don't know if I'd call it genius, more like accidental clarity. The best kind. You couldn't ignore it when it was right there on the screen, being broadcast to millions of people. All those people saying, they're fine, they're just dramatic. That was Derek's voice coming out of everyone's mouths. Once you heard it from other people, you couldn't unhear it from him. She was right. That was exactly it. I'd heard Derek's dismissiveness so many times that I'd internalized it, made it my own voice. But hearing other people say the same things about strangers in crisis, hearing that same lack of empathy directed at people I knew were suffering, it broke the spell. It made me see that the problem wasn't that I was too sensitive. The problem was that Derek was too callous. I drive past our old house sometimes. Can't help it. It's on the way to the grocery store I like. Someone new bought it, a young family with 2 kids and a dog. I saw them moving in, watched the mom directing the movers while the dad played with the kids in the yard. They looked happy. I hope they are. I hope that house is a home for them in a way it never was for me. I don't miss Derek. That's the surprising part. I thought I would. I thought I'd have moments of doubt, of wondering if I'd made the right choice, of missing the partnership even if it was dysfunctional. But I don't. I don't miss walking on eggshells. I don't miss managing his moods. I don't miss apologizing for things that weren't my fault. I don't miss feeling invisible in my own life. I heard through the grapevine, Tom's wife, who Jessica knows, that Derek's been dating some woman from his office, 28 years old, impressed by his success and his stories. I feel sorry for her. Not jealous, not hurt. Sorry, because she doesn't know yet what I learned over 15 years. That the man who seems confident and successful and charming in the beginning is the same man who'll tell you you're being dramatic when you're drowning. That the person who makes you feel special at first will eventually make you feel small. That love isn't grand gestures and expensive dinners. Love is showing up. Love is seeing someone. Love is holding their hand during the hard parts and not complaining that it's inconvenient. And Derek doesn't know how to do any of that. He probably never will. So here I am, almost a year after that Valentine's Day when everything changed. When I sat on my couch watching a cruise ship disaster and realized I'd been living my own disaster for 15 years. The Ocean Paradise lawsuit is still ongoing. I follow it sometimes, read the updates. The cruise line is trying to settle, offering amounts that the passengers' lawyers say are insultingly low. The CEO, the same one who called it an inconvenient situation, resigned under pressure 6 months ago. The ship itself has been retired from service, too damaged and too associated with disaster to ever sail again. I think about those passengers sometimes. Wonder if they're okay. Wonder if they still have nightmares about being trapped at sea. Wonder if they flinch when someone tells them they're being dramatic or overreacting. I know, I do. I'm working on it in therapy, learning to trust my own perceptions again, learning that when something feels wrong, it probably is wrong, and I don't need someone else to validate that before I act on it. Dr. Kim and I are working on something she calls reclaiming my narrative. For so long, I let Derek tell me who I was. Too sensitive, too emotional, too much, not enough. Now I'm learning to tell my own story in my own words. And here's what I know now. I'm not too sensitive. I'm empathetic. There's a difference. I'm not too emotional. I'm human. I feel things. That's not a weakness. I'm not too much. Derek just wanted someone who required less of him. And I'm not crazy for watching that cruise disaster and seeing my own life reflected back at me. Because sometimes it takes seeing someone else's crisis to recognize your own. Those people on the Ocean Paradise were stranded at sea for 5 days. I was stranded in my marriage for 15 years. Both of us were waving flags. Both of us were being told we were fine when we weren't fine. The difference is, they were rescued. I had to rescue myself. And if you're watching this, if you're listening to this story and something inside you is saying that sounds familiar, if you've spent years making yourself smaller, quieter, less, trying to accommodate someone who never once tried to meet you halfway, if you've been told you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional, when really you're just asking for basic human kindness, if you've been waving flags that nobody sees, you're not crazy. You're not imagining things. You're not too much. You're stranded, and it's time to save yourself. Because here's what nobody tells you about staying in the wrong relationship. Every day you stay is a day you're choosing them over you. You're choosing their comfort over your truth. You're choosing the familiar misery over the unknown freedom. And I get it. Leaving is terrifying. Starting over is terrifying. Admitting you were wrong, that you wasted years, that the person you loved didn't love you back. It's all terrifying. But you know what's more terrifying? Looking back at your life and realizing you spent it waiting for someone to see you who was never going to look. I'm 41 years old. I spent 15 years of my adult life with someone who couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved. That's a long time. That's a third of my life. But I have time now. Time to figure out who I am without someone else defining me. Time to build a life that's mine, that reflects my values, that makes me happy. Time to be seen, to be heard, to be enough, exactly as I am. And if that cruise disaster taught me anything, it's this. When you're drowning, it doesn't matter if the water is 6 inches deep or 60 feet. Drowning is drowning. And the people who love you don't stand on the shore and tell you you're being dramatic. They throw you a line. They pull you to safety. They don't laugh at your fear. Derek stood on the shore and laughed. At the cruise passengers. At me. At anyone who dared to admit they were struggling. I'm not on that shore anymore. I'm on solid ground, building something new, something real, something mine. And I'm never going back to sea with someone who won't save me if I'm drowning. Never again. Before I let you go, I want to hear from you, because this story isn't just mine. It's a story that too many people live. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had a moment like my cruise ship moment? A moment where something completely unrelated suddenly made you see your own life clearly? Maybe it was a movie or a song or someone else's story. What was that moment for you? And if you're still in that moment, if you're still waving flags that nobody sees, if you're still being told you're too dramatic or too sensitive, when really you're just asking to be treated with basic kindness, I want you to know something. You're not alone. There are so many of us out here who've lived this, who've escaped it, who've rebuilt our lives from nothing and found that nothing was actually better than what we had before. It's scary, I won't lie to you. Leaving is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But staying in something that's killing you slowly, that's harder. That's just a slower, quieter kind of death. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve someone who shows up for you, especially when it's hard, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when you're waving flags and begging for help. And if the person you're with can't do that, they don't deserve you. It's that simple and that complicated. If this story resonated with you, if you saw yourself in it, if you've lived some version of it, please hit that like button. Not for me, for everyone else watching who needs to know they're not alone. Every like is a signal to someone else that they're not crazy, that they're not imagining things, that their reality is valid. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We tell real stories here, stories about people surviving impossible things and coming out the other side stronger, stories about choosing yourself even when it feels impossible, stories that remind us all that we're more resilient than we think. Share this video. Share it with your sister who needs to hear it. Share it with your friend who's making excuses for someone who doesn't deserve them. Share it with anyone who's been drowning while people tell them they're fine. And leave me a comment. Tell me your story, even if it's just a piece of it. Tell me your cruise ship moment. Tell me what made you finally see clearly. Tell me how you saved yourself or how you're working on saving yourself right now. This community we're building, it's not just people watching videos. It's people lifting each other up. It's people saying, I see you, I hear you, your experience matters. It's people throwing lifelines to strangers because we all know what it's like to be stranded. I read every comment, every single one, and I learn from your stories the same way you're learning from mine. So please, engage with this video. Like it, comment, share it, subscribe. Not because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because it helps people, real people who need to hear that they're not alone, that they're not too much, that they deserve better. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. Remember, you're not stranded, you're not alone, and you're strong enough to save yourself. Take care of yourselves out there. I'll see you in the next story.